Yeah, it's just it's a fun racetrack, and I think we're all happy to be home and spend a little time in our own beds. It's great for us with Hendrick Motorsports being so close by to and have all the different crew members and their families and everybody come out and be a part of it. And we want to run well here. I mean, it's a home race for Hendrick Motorsports, really for all the teams, I guess. So there's a little bit more weight on a home event. Everybody wants to do well. And then, as you pointed out, we're almost halfway through the chase. Points are very important, and we're at a track that's been good to us. So we'll have to get on track today and see how we stack up. But I hope to be very competitive and very fast. We had an awesome car in the All-Star race and ran up front all night in the 600 as well. So we're expecting good things, and it's time to get to work and see what we got.
All right, we'll take some questions now for Jimmie. If you have one, raise your hand. We'll go to Tom and then over to David. Go ahead, Tom.
Hi, Jimmie. Tom Jensen, Speed.com. We're 30 races into the season. In the first 15, you finished ahead of the two on track 10 times. Last 15, he's finished ahead of you 11 times out of those 15. Are you concerned about that at all, and what do you have to do to make up your points deficit?
You know, as far as stats go, I'm not aware of you know, that particular stat and the way that works, but I'm well aware of the fact they won 2 of these 4 chase races, and they've been very competitive. And they have shown that strength throughout the year and have been building. You know, I think we have a lot of mile and a halfs left on the schedule where they're strong. Plus, their fuel mileage, you know, works very, very well for them, and that could be a factor here tonight. It could be a factor on any of these tracks where we have, you know, low speed. Low fall off due to tires and all that. So here, Kansas. Wouldn't expect Texas to be a fuel mileage race, but you know, it could be. Homestead could be. So you know, from that standpoint, I look at them as a very, very strong threat. Then I look at a few tracks that historically aren't good for them, and hope to get points on them there. Plus, I feel like we can race them heads up. I mean, we've been nip and tuck through all these events, and you've got to bring your best stuff out right now, and that's what the chase is about. And all that said, I mean, the 11 is still right there, and you know, there's some other guys back there that also have something to say too. So. Regardless of the stats, I mean, they're a threat. They're the leader right now. You know, it's not after 1. We're after 4, and they're the leader right now. We've got to go out and race them hard. Yep.
David.
Yeah, Jimmie, David Newton, ESPN.com. First, were you aware of Dale Jr. having headaches and issues that could be related to concussions after the Kansas crash? He said he kind of kept it to himself for 6 weeks. And secondly, how tough would you think it would be, like for a driver like yourself contending for a championship, to say you're having headaches after a hard hit, to go to a doctor knowing you risk the chance of maybe being parked and not having a chance to run for that championship?
Well, I didn't know that he had headaches or any symptoms following the Kansas tire test crash. I knew it was a big impact. You know, I heard about it. I think we were at a team debrief or team meeting or something had taken place, and word traveled through our meeting quickly that they had a tire problem and it was a big hit. And then, of course, the car came back to the shop and got my eyes on it myself and knew that it was a strong hit. So, you know, it's something that an athlete is faced with through injury. You know, there's some athletes that are more prone for concussions. You know, clearly racing's one, hockey. Football, you know, you get into some of those contact sports where you as an athlete have to know if you're right or not. And I think in some cases, even if you aren't right, you could work your way through some of these different evaluations, you know, and not say anything and just try to get better on your own. But I credit Junior for being aware of how he feels, what's going on. It's going to be a tough week for him, especially as the week goes on. Just spent a few minutes with him shooting something with the other Hendrick drivers, and I don't think the significance of missing this weekend's race has set in yet. I mean, he's going through, you know, his workload and going about his business, but it's going to be tough, especially when he's on. You know, I guess he won't be here, but when he's at the house, practice starts up, qualifying's on tonight. He's watching it, you know, on television Saturday night. I can only imagine how difficult that will be for him. And to come so far all year long for himself and that team, the sponsors associated, everybody involved, you know, it's a sad day that he's going to be out, but we have to pay attention to his health and really focus on, you know, the decision's been made. We got to focus on getting him healed up Concussions are a tricky thing, as we all know, and we've got to make sure that he's right. So if he is in the car and does have another crash, that it doesn't set him back any further.
Let's go with, I think we had Tom and then Nate. Tom, you got a question? No question? I'm sorry. Okay, my bad. Nate? Nate?
Okay.
Tom?
Nate.
Sorry.
It's all right. Nate Ryan, USA Today. Jimmy, kind of following up on Newt's question there. You mentioned that there could be times where you could work your way through these things and be able to kind of disguise the symptoms and everything. And Junior said he's had concussions before where the symptoms apparently have dissipated in a couple of days and then he's raced. Do you have personal experience with that? Do you know if you've had concussions in accidents and then had the symptoms clear up and then you race that weekend? And do you have any concerns about the danger of if guys can do that in this sport, and it's different from other sports, and that they can put others at risk, not just themselves? Are there any concerns about racing with guys who may be able to hide those symptoms and still race?
No, I don't. I mean, I think in today's world, the process after a crash and what you go through is far greater than what it's been in the past. And if your symptoms are serious enough to where you can't drive, I mean, it's going to be noticeable. The impacts I've had where I had concussions, I had one or two when I was really young on dirt bikes, and it was real easy then to not race. But when I had the brakes go out at Watkins Glen, I had one following that, and I literally got in my truck and was going to drive to the race shop, and I got on 77 and went north and ended up at Interstate 40, and I should have gone south before I realized that. I'm like, where am I going? And made a phone call, drove myself to the doctor, got checked out. So at that point, once I was on the books, I had to be cleared before I got back in the race car. So once I was cleared, I got back in that following weekend and went racing, and it went away within a day or two. I was fine, and that's the tricky thing about concussions. They affect everybody differently, and you can recover quickly. Some people are more susceptible to them. It lingers, it lasts. It's a tricky deal. So the key is just getting on the record, getting on the books in front of the NASCAR medical liaisons and everybody involved. Make sure that you check out right, and Junior did the right thing, making sure that he went through all the proper channels. Cup. On a funny note, I can't remember. No, I don't think I've had any in Cup. Even the big impact I had here. I mean, we tested. I guess it was maybe Monday or Tuesday after, and that was a huge number that I had. But again, depending on the box inside the car, and if it is a big number, that doesn't always equate to what the driver feels. If you pull your head away from the headrest and you have the impact and you spot your head a few inches of distance for momentum, you'll raise your injury. If you lean into your restraint systems like you're supposed to, you can go through a lot higher number on the black box. So there's a lot of weird factors that play into these concussions.
Let's go Randy Kovich, then we'll go Woody, and then to Monty. Go ahead, Randy. We need a microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Jimmy, I want to change the subject. Can you just talk about you and Chad? I don't have it at my fingertips if you're the longest running driver, crew chief going, but you certainly passed the test of time and have the championships. What keeps you guys together? What keeps you guys on the same page? Just talk about his effectiveness and what he's helped you do.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, that long relationship situation is what I'm about. I mean, I've been that way through my whole life with friends, crew chiefs, my own personal relationships, all that. It's just been me. So it's not out of character for me, and I find a lot of comfort in working with the same people year after year. There's a low turnover rate at the 48 team, and look at Ron Malik and how far we go back all the way to our ASA days. So I think a lot of it's me. There have been some rough spots along the way, but I'm not a guy that thinks I want to make a change. I want to fix the problem. If we're not getting along or our cars aren't fast, let's work harder on the cars or on our relationship or whatever it is, so that we work as we should within the race team. And for whatever reason, we've looked at ourselves and want to correct our issues than throwing in the towel and like, okay, I can't handle this anymore, I'm out. That's just not us for whatever reason. And I'm glad. I mean, we have been together for a long, long stretch, and I don't have any plans of making any changes. Christine laughing. You know, I think what works really good with us is our personalities are pretty different, and if we were a lot alike, it would, I don't think it would work, especially if we were both like him. If I was like him, I think we'd fight a heck of a lot more and be real uptight and have some issues that spin off from that. But, you know, I have full confidence in what he does, and I know that there isn't a detail missed. And I can be more relaxed and be more of myself and climb in the car and do my thing, you know. So it really works well, our dynamic. And again, if he was more relaxed and more like me, I don't think we would have the success we've had. So I think it's really that chemistry between the two that works well.
Let's go to Woody right over here, and then we'll go to Monty and then to Viv.
Woody King with MRN. Jimmie, a big test coming up at Kansas this week. How critical is it to actually have that kind of opportunity in the middle of the chase, and then more generically speaking, with the changes that are being talked about for next year, to let you guys test at some of the tracks you race at? How helpful is that going to be?
Yeah, it'll be really helpful. I would imagine the chase guys will really just be focused on this year's stuff and what we need to do there. But it's nice to have data files, as we all know, for our simulation programs and 7-post machines and all the stuff that we use back at the shop. So that's good. I really feel more than anything it's just a safe move, and it makes total sense to do it for our sport. We don't need to go into a racetrack and have an issue. I know there was a tire test, but it's always different when the entire field's there pushing one another. You know, we seem to have other things surface from a tire standpoint, or even the asphalt itself. You know, there's always that risk of it pulling up. So it's nice that we go there. We all get acclimated with the new surface, the redesign. You know, I guess there's some small little changes and things, and validate the tire, validate the track. You know, get everything right. So when we show up Friday, we can put on the show that we need to.
Monty?
Monty Dutton, Gaston Gazette. Jimmie, in regard to the chase, some drivers just basically say, we take them one race at a time, that I drive the same way in March in, I don't know, Las Vegas as I do in Homestead in November. Some people say that, you know, the important thing is getting in the top 10 early and you change your strategy, depend on it. You've won 5, you're in a position to know. Do you feel going into every race the same, or do you have different attitudes at various points this season?
Yeah, I definitely have different attitudes at various points. I think generally speaking, as the chase wears on in the top 2, 4, whatever that ends up being here in a few weeks, you know, those top guys right now, it kind of looks like 3. You start worrying about each other and racing differently, and you know, I know the 11 is going to be strong at Martinsville, and I expect to be there too. Not sure on the 2, so there might be a chance to get some points on him there. Look at mile and a half. The 2's been real strong, especially with fuel mileage savings. You know, so you really start strategizing deep into the chase, and I think all teams do to finish as good as they can. I personally start off the chase one race at a time, and that comes through my experience. I've had some quick starts and I've had some really slow starts, and have won both ways. And what kind of helped me keep my sanity was taking it one race at a time. And in 06, they let me back in. You know, I had 2 DNFs and everybody else had a ton of trouble and let me back in. So it really just, in some ways you spin it to how you can lead your team and create positive thoughts for yourself. But then in some respects you do it for sanity. And then once you get to the end of the chase, you got to be smart. You know, you got to know who you're racing and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and kind of what you need to do too.
Let's go to Joe Menzer. Raise your hand, Joe. I'm sorry, Viv. We got Viv and then Joe.
Viv Bernstein, New York Times. I want to just clarify 2 things. I want to clarify, you say you're not worried about guys with concussions getting in the car because they don't want to get out. Number 2, I wanted to ask you, are you surprised that of all the guys you're chasing right now that it's Brad in front of you instead of maybe a veteran? You know, 2 years ago Brad was 25th in the standings and now he's in first in the chase. So are you surprised about that, and then about the concussions?
I mean, I've known Brad was going to be strong all year. I would assume that he'd win a race in the Chase, and would probably say a mile and a half. I wouldn't have picked him to win Dover. You know, there's a couple other guys I'd put up there in front of him. And then especially the way the race was unfolding, you know, the Gibbs cars and then myself ran in order for a long time, and I finally got by the 11, and then finally got to the 18 and had control of the race, and then fuel mileage came into play. But they've been strong, and I think you look at how they came on late summer and made the Chase last year, and then this year have steadily progressed. You know, I'm not shocked, but it wouldn't. If you asked me before the Chase started who would be leading at the halfway point, I would put them in the mix, but I wouldn't put them out front. You know, just to me, I kind of look at veterans. I would put Jeff Gordon up in there. You know, for me, and I've always said this too, guys that have won championships, I always seed first. And I would have expected Tony to be up there a little higher too at this point. So it's nothing against the two by any means, but the way my mind works, you know, when you get in these 10 races and the pressure really kicks in, I first look at previous champions and then guys that have been there in the fire. Denny's been in the fire. Carl's been in the fire, but you know, he's not in the Chase, so it's hard to put him in this year's crop. But that's where my mind goes first. And then what was the first part? Oh, the concussion thing. It's never entered my mind, to be honest with you. I haven't thought about it. I mean, I know from my own sensations in the car when I've had an issue, the you know, the process of making sure I'm right. I've gone through it and felt comfortable back in the race car. So it's never crossed my mind. It probably will now moving forward. I'm sure we're all much more aware of it now, but up until today, I haven't been concerned. And the safety that we have in the cars today with the soft walls and Hans device, I think we've grown very comfortable with the severity of crashes. And you know, some people, some fans don't think that there's enough crashing and enough action, and it's a little too tame now. But this is a reminder how dangerous the sport is. You know, we've made it a lot safer, but you know, there still are people riding in those cars.
Joe?
Joe Menzer, NASCAR.com. I'm just getting back to driving north on 77. It says, how scary was that? How frightening was that to you when you kind of took stock of it? And you talked about, you know, getting these concussions on the books, but is there sort of a mentality of balancing that versus being a tough guy and just trying to solve it on your own like Dale did at first?
Yeah, I mean, again, everybody faces those decisions. I can say through the few that I have had, within a couple days, things change dramatically, and you start to feel much better. What I have learned through the years, and even watching through the NFL, when you're not fully healed, you're more susceptible, and the next concussion can come at a much lower impact and be much more severe. So I think that's the greatest concern. You know, and if it's a really bad wreck, we're all going to know and understand it and see it. And then you're on the books and you know. But if you have a mild concussion and it goes away and you feel fine to get back in the race car, and again, I just saw Junior and he looks great, and he's like, man, I feel great, but I'm scared, you know, if something happens again. You just can't take that risk. So that's where you got to man up and decide, you know, what risk you're willing to take. And I think history shows that you need to make the right decision so you don't hurt yourself anymore.
Final question, Scott Fowler over here. Scott, give him the mic. He hadn't been able to ask one all day. I know. Let's go with Scott.
Jimmy, I think from 03 to 05, you won like 5 out of 6 points races here. You were very dominant, and I know you've won some other things since then, but it's not quite been the same. How do you account for that, and do you think it can change this weekend?
Yeah, I think we'll be real competitive. We had an advantage with the old surface, and then they ground it, and we still were on top of things. And then the repave was really a great equalizer, and I think kind of tipped things towards Casey Kane's hand, if anyone's. So you know, we really hope to be back to our winning ways here. It'd be a good time to have that happen. And I still love the racetrack. There's you know, a lot of the mile and a halves look similar to a lot of people, but inside the car on the racetrack, this one drives way different than any of them, and it's fun.